Hello everybody, and welcome to Barry Season 4. If you're not really caught up to speed with the Barry series, go check out my video reviewing the first 3 seasons all in one. And if you do, then let's jump right into this. In Episode 1, Barry is finally put in prison after being caught by the police, all thanks to the setup led by Janet Moss's dad and Gene Cousineau himself. We see in the opening scene that, two prison guards in the main central watchtower in the prison, watch TV and, see Barry's arrest on the news, and then one of them looks to see Barry being put in a cell and excitedly tells his coworker that that's the guy on TV. When Barry ends up, getting settled in a prison, he uses one of his, permitted phone calls to try and call Mr. Cousineau. And when he does answer, he, ends the conversation simply by saying, "I got you," and hanging up. Later we find that Fuchs is yet again trying to get off the hook a bit by reducing his sentence through incriminating Barry more by revealing that, Janet Moss's death and some of the other deaths he's caused are just the tip of the iceberg. So he yet again wears a wire and confronts Barry in the prison courtyard right after Barry started hallucinating, or at least imagining, the acting class buddies there, including Sally and Mr. Cousineau. Of course, Fuchs makes it pretty obvious he is wearing the wire by, talking really loud, trying to get Barry to talk about all the incriminating stuff he's done. But Barry, he's not mad at Fuchs anymore. He clearly feels that he's the only person left to talk to and, have to comfort him in some way, because he tells him that he was right and that he shouldn't have, gone through with all this acting stuff and tried to explore himself as a person. And, he and Fuchs hug, and this clearly, at least to a degree, sets something different in Fuchs, and he likely thinks that he has to go back to how he was before and actually care for Barry like he tried to before things got crazy. Meanwhile, Mr. Cousineau is doing pretty well with his show for the most part. Obviously his connection to Barry doesn't seem to make things bad, mostly because of course his girlfriend was a murder victim, and he himself an emotional victim. So when he does get onto his new show, the studio audience, who isn't a laugh track like it probably would be in this day and age, the audience cheers and claps for a long period of time, which catches Cousineau off guard a little bit, obviously, because everyone is cheering him on for basically taking down Barry and getting the justice he deserves. And after the show, he is met with Jim Moss, Janet's dad, and they both agree that the media shouldn't be involved in the case. They shouldn't be talking to the media about anything involving Barry, just in case. But as it's revealed later on, that doesn't seem to apply too much to Gene, as he calls a Vanity Fair reporter in a masked voice, or at least he's trying to mask his own voice. He doesn't actually use a voice changer to set up some sort of, interview, no one follow you, or anything like that. So that's pretty interesting. Then we cut to Sally, who is, just got off her flight and has gotten a barrage of notifications on her phone, and that is she's on, off the plane, and she eventually, gets a call from one of her friends who, tells her some stuff about what happened, and she also looks at some articles and, realizes that Barry has been arrested and that he is a murderer. And when when she is picked up by her mother and they're, driving, she is in shock and can't believe that Barry, is a killer. And she breaks down and has what I would say is either short of or is a panic attack. And her mother is just kind of almost indifferent, or at least she's partly annoyed, as if this has happened before and she doesn't care as much. And it's also revealed at the end of this scene that they were at a drive-thru, and the mom's just picking up the order, which is a little funny but a little messed up at the same time. Once Ellie gets back to her old home, she meets her dad, has a awkward chat with him as he's trying to comfort her. The fact of her boyfriend having been a murderer is a little awkward going in with that. And she's also staying in her old room, which has been turned into a man cave for her dad. And when she goes to the living room and sits next to her dad, and her mom's watching the news, she finds out about... lapse of memory, She was watching Sally's show that she had told them about a bit, but didn't expect, them to watch it. And that's when her parents learned that it's actually based on her life and based on her abusive ex-boyfriend. And in a strange turn of events, it seems that her mom was kind of defensive of her ex-boyfriend, whose name is Sam. I forgot to mention that at one point. And she's like, you used Sam's name, his real name? I'm going to have to tell his mom about this. And Sally is just confused and upset that, they're not talking about the fact that she had, spent a good few years of her life with Barry, and all of a sudden he turns out to be a killer. And her mom is weirdly saying, oh, don't raise your voice, when she didn't, and then she actually raises her voice, being just flat out crazy mad that they don't seem to care and all this stuff. At least her mom doesn't really care. Her dad just seems kind of like a doormat, I'd say, based on his interactions. But her dad does offer her a small job just to take her mind off things, I guess. I don't know. Near the latter half of the episode, we then cut to NoHo Hank and Cristobal, who now have a house, I guess in the desert somewhere. I think it's still in California, but they seem to have done pretty well with themselves so far. Cristobal seems to be holding up well after the events of last season, and they're talking with the realtor of the place, and she brings up that good sand is hard to come by, which Hank's a little confused by it as he looks behind him out the window and sees sand and is like, there's sand right there. But she clarifies, saying that good high quality sand sold to construction companies and all of that are sands imported from like Africa or somewhere like that. So this sparks an idea in Cristobal, who brings it up to Hank, saying that they could break into the sand business, because it wouldn't be fully illegal. At least I can guess that it's not too illegal, taking a dominant place in the sand market. Hank's a little bit, apprehensive of the idea, and when finding out that Barry is in prison, he thinks about wanting to break him out. But when Cristobal finds him on the laptop at night, he doesn't want Cristobal to know about that right now, so he simply appeals to the sand idea. So they go to some new associates that they're trying to get, who aren't in the best of terms with the Chechens, but Cristobal seems to get good favor with them for the most part. At one other point, Barry is in the bathroom and he is having another sort of mental breakdown of sorts, where he's like slapping himself across the face, berating himself, until it gets worse as he starts punching the wall, leaving blood on it, and slamming his head on the wall. And then one of the prison guards from earlier comes in and is like, hey, it's okay, and sort of tries to make him happy or something, I guess because he's on TV or something, because he's a celebrity. It's kind of weird. But Barry, after that, whether it's because he's become sort of suicidal and he wants this guy to kill him, or because he thinks it's wrong to want to appeal to a celebrity who's a murderer, but he tells him that he's a cop killer, and that he will, when he gets out, he would kill him, he would kill his whole family, and all this crazy stuff. And even though this guard seems to be a little bit soft-spoken and I guess nice, he pulls out his baton, and we get like a close-up of Barry as he's preparing for the blow, but we don't really see the impact, but we do see blood trickle down his forehead, but where it's coming from is out of frame, and he has a bit more of a hallucination again, like he did before and throughout this episode and the next. And then later on we find Fuchs going into the bathroom and trying to I guess patch up Barry to an extent and comfort him, like saying it's gonna be alright and all of this stuff. And yeah, that's mostly where the episode ends. In episode 2, Barry kind of continues his hallucinations while in prison, such as the first time he met Fuchs when he was a child. It's a very far away shot, as we can just barely hear most of the dialogue between them, and it's all in like the desert, so it's kind of hard to tell whether or not most of this would be real or not, but it does suggest that Fuchs really is at least some sort of family friend, or at least was a business associate of Barry's dad, and got to know him more at some point, and all leading up to Barry becoming a hitman. And he wakes up, does his usual, prison stuff, just kind of walking around, eating, and whatever you do in prison. Later on, he is told he has a visitor, and he goes to the visitor center with the thick glass between you and whoever's visiting you, and it turns out to be Sally who's visited him, and they both pick up the little phone fiends that they need to communicate through, and Sally is upset, saying that he lied to her, and Barry argues against that, saying that he only left out the parts that he didn't want her to hear, or didn't want her to know, which of course sounds like bullshit, and it does, but I would say that he's legitimately thinking he's in the right with that sort of thing, and that just adds to his unstable mental state and his overall delusions. But Sally is still upset, and she's also asking him where their dog is, and he eventually gets to the point of actually answering, where he says that he gave the dog a good home. And even though he tries to appeal to her, saying that this isn't him, he's sorry, he's just sorry, and she can't take that. She's already had a point where she knew that this relationship would not end well with all the signs, so she leaves him, just as Barry is saying I love you, even though she can't hear it, but he just repeatedly says that until the scene ends. Later we continue Mr. Kusno's story as he's pretending to be someone else, and setting up the Vanity Fair interview, where he's leaving clues for this reporter to find, but as he's going to the next spot to find the next note or whatever, he finds Kusno putting up the note, and the jig is up. So Kusno brings him over to a theater, of course, so Kusno can do a one-man show telling his story of how he met Barry. And of course he does kind of exaggerate some bits and act like he knew something was up about Barry the whole time, while also giving him this stupid voice, making Barry come off as a dope of some sort. Of course he makes the reporter sort of make this a anonymous sort of story, and he's cool with that and says, yeah, I got everything pretty good, I'm gonna be on my way. As Mr. Kusno is kind of cooling off in the what is it, the I guess break room, I'm not sure, I don't know what to call it, but Sally ends up being there, and she's upset still, asking him how long had he known about Barry, and that he could have told her, and she basically has daggers in her eyes. She's pretty pissed at him, but Kusno sort of argues against that, saying that she didn't see a single sign about Barry and how unstable he might be, but she just kind of looks at him like, what the fuck? And again, she might just kill him. I kind of get that vibe from that whole interaction, but that's pretty much the end of that for the most part. We then continue Cristobal and Hank's story of the whole sand venture, and they take their new associates, or future associates, to what Hank calls the bestest place on Earth, he says. And it turns out that they took these associates to Dave and Buster's, to a real Dave and Buster's. And they're like all sitting on this large round table, and Cristobal and Hank like are walking around the table, giving their pitch, and they're continuously, trading off, talking about the whole thing between the two as they pass each other by while walking around the table. And, that seems to be a decent enough pitch that they've got with the sand. So they continue the pitch in it looks like one of those, show stages, but in Dave and Buster's somewhere. I don't know where that would be or why it exists, but it's there. And, everyone seems sold until at the end of the final pitch, Hank, brings up that they have Barry, on their side, the best assassin ever. And of course, Cristobal, and, takes off his mic and is like, dude, what the hell? Are you joking with me? Specifically, he says, "Are you yoking with me?" because of his accent. And Cristobal just says, "No, I'm not yoking with you," even though he doesn't have the same accent. But, things seem to still be decent for the associates, at least it seems. Obviously, it's hard to tell if the associates at any point would know if Barry's in prison or not. Later, when they get home, Hank does tell Cristobal that Barry is in prison and then they need to break him out. But this leads for Cristobal to tell Hank that he has gone soft, and that's why people don't take him as seriously. But when Hank goes for some fresh air, he gets a phone call from Fuchs, from prison, of course, and Fuchs tells him that Barry has apparently sold out to an informant, sold out as an informant in some way, and that, he's, quote, bringing a friend as a condition of, leaving as an informant. So Hank doesn't really like this news, and immediately goes back to the house and tells Cristobal, "We need to kill Barry." And that was episodes 1 and 2 of Barry Season 4. I thought these were fantastic episodes, great starts for the season. Very interesting, ways to see the characters. It was neat seeing Sally's, parents and understanding how she is as a person, and, realizing what all of her, behavior is a result of. She's clearly, not really a happy person deep down. She is not satisfied with life, and she has tried so hard to do something that she has really wanted. And it's, sad to know that at least her mom is basically enabling her ex and his behavior, which is very sad. It's, nice to always see Hank and Cristobal together, and it's nice to have this little humorous subplot with the whole sand business venture. And while this isn't, a deep thing, I still think it's interesting that the stuff involving, the criminals and the gangsters and all that are more humorous, while everything involving the supposed normal good guys are more dramatic and disturbing to a degree. Obviously, Barry is not really a normal person, but he has been portrayed to a certain degree earlier in the series as a good guy. But even then, there was moments where it was mostly just a, sort of grayness, like a gray character, someone you're not entirely supposed to relate to, or at least sympathize. A little bit like Walter White. I'm interested in seeing what Kusno's angle is, other than just wanting, some extra fame and attention, while also keeping a little anonymity with at least the Vanity Fair interview. As I said before, it's really nice to, see Cristobal and Hank back together again, doing their usual stuff. It's also interesting to see, Hank go through a bit of a, moment where he, sort of, reverts from being, quote, soft, when he decides to, want to kill Barry, which is mostly just him, being personally hurt that Barry supposedly, is going to sell them out. But, it sort of correlates with what Cristobal said and will clearly make him happy in that aspect. But I guess we'll have to, wait and see where that all goes from here. I'm going to give episode 1 of Barry season 4 an 8 out of 10. Pretty good start so far. And that will be the same with episode 2, which will also get an 8 out of 10. Good job so far. I hope you enjoyed this review for Barry episodes 1 and 2. Hope you stay tuned for future episode reviews and maybe check out some of my other videos. Other than that, I hope you guys have a good day. Stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.